Good morning, everyone. My name is Srinivas Annambhotla. I'm a product manager within the wireless networking group at Cisco. And today we are excited to present to you how we are looking to enable IoT solutions with the Catalyst wireless portfolio in conjunction with Cisco DNA Spaces. Now, IoT means different things to different people, right? And what we've seen over the last few years is it's a very vertical specific view, and the solutions are very vertical specific. For example, in corporate enterprise, you see use cases like indoor navigation and workspace optimization. In industrial, which has been an early adopter of IoT, you see autonomous guided vehicles and factory floor automation. And in the outdoor space, there are use cases such as smart cities, right, that are gaining traction. And what we've also noticed is in each of these vertical segments, there are different wireless technologies that tend to dominate. Right? Given where Cisco Catalyst wireless portfolio plays well and dominantly plays, I'll focus on corporate enterprise and smart buildings. I'll leave wired and 5G, which is also relevant to where we play, but that's for another session. Now, across these vertical segments in the IoT space, what you do see is a common set of challenges for scalable deployments, right? One is onboarding, right? How do you onboard a plethora of these sensors that are rudimentary onto the wireless network? The next one is how do you manage, right? How do you configure these sensors and how do you do firmware updates over the air and things like that? The third one is security, right? And this is, again, a very prime pillar that we hear often from customers as a roadblock for scalable deployment. Because these are rudimentary sensors with very weak security postures. So how do you secure your IoT deployments at scale, right? And none of us can forget the Mirai botnet attack and a whole bunch of other attacks in this series, right? And last but not the least is how do you interpret data and telemetry from these sensors? Because at the end of the day, IoT solutions are being deployed for a purpose, and that is enabling line of business outcomes, enabling efficiencies in the enterprise. And you need to make sense of all the telemetry from these diverse sensors to actually enable those line of business outcomes. Now, given the corporate enterprise and the smart building segments, what we are increasingly seeing is, with Wi-Fi 6, obviously, it brings in the goodness of some of the Wi-Fi 11AH capabilities, such as target wake time, to offer battery savings for a lot of these sensors, and also enhance spectral efficiency. But we're also seeing a lot of the sensors take the form, utilize Bluetooth and ZigBee or Thread. Right? And our own projections and projections from several analysts forecast that across Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, ZigBee, and Thread, about 70% of all indoor IoT devices will be covered. Right? And you'll see other protocols obviously form the bulk of the other bucket, such as NFC and protocols like that. But and it's just also the law of semiconductors, right? The law of economies of scale for some of these chipsets that they really drive down cost as they increase in shipments. So you will see more and more of these devices take on some of these protocols. Right? Now, I quickly wanted to touch upon the landscape beyond just Wi-Fi. ZigBee and Thread being net new additions to the portfolio, I did want to highlight that. Where we see ZigBee and Thread dominantly play is in the smart building space. So you'll see a lot of thermostats, lights, locks, devices like these utilize ZigBee, which has been a historically dominant protocol in the space. And increasingly, we are seeing a lot of these devices and device manufacturers move towards the IP version, the IPv6 version is the Thread. Right? Now, there are other use cases that we've seen, industrial and manufacturing sensors and electronic shelf labeling in retail spaces as well. Right? The other one that I wanted to touch upon is obviously the new Bluetooth 5, which enhances 4.2 significantly, both in terms of range, bandwidth, as well as battery consumption. Right? And some of the popular use cases that we see in the space are proximity marketing, indoor navigation, as well as asset tracking. Right? And today, both ZigBee, Thread, as well as Bluetooth, a lot of the deployments are overlay networks. So ZigBee and Thread, you can imagine a field controller or a ZigBee field controller from a building management system provider as being a separate device in the enterprise, and you have a lot of these lights and locks connect to them. Right? But one common theme that we see from customers is we don't want to manage overlay networks, right? And customers abhor the notion of building and managing these overlay networks, and they absolutely want to derive more from their existing wireless infrastructure. And it is for this reason, right? The way we think about the full stack solution for IoT use cases is spanning 3 pillars, right? The connect piece at the very bottom, and it's the least common denominator that we can offer as the wireless infrastructure provider. The next one is control, and by control, what we mean is visibility, security, and segmentation, right? Because as more of these IoT devices enter the enterprise and are getting onto the corporate IT network, the IT persona wants to have visibility into these devices, right? Now, a few years ago, the IT persona would not have cared about a smart lock being deployed in the enterprise or a ZigBee light being deployed in the enterprise, right? But as these networks collapse and converge, there is increasingly a need for the IT persona to get visibility into these new classes of devices. And at the very top, we do see the need for a consumption layer, right? Because at the end of the day, like I mentioned before, you need the telemetry to be assimilated from these diverse set of devices to really enable line of business outcomes. And while we can offer connectivity and we can offer control, we also, without the consumption piece, the customer is really not deriving the full value of the IoT deployment, right? And today, the way we look at it is with the wireless infrastructure, we offer a converged connectivity platform across multiple protocols, and I'll go over how we are enabling some of that. Sure.
Is the customer able to get the IoT data out of the controller without having DNA in?
Yeah, so I'll quickly talk about how we are looking at enabling some of those things. Yeah, absolutely, because we do acknowledge that there are a lot of customers who want proprietary solution vendors, and they want to be able to use the same wireless infrastructure, but be able to work with a vendor of their choice.
I could see a potential problem on 2.4. If you're adding all these devices in a building, each light is connected using ZigBee or Bluetooth. Do you see like the 2.4 frequency band evolving in being like an IoT type of band, and then having more of our typical Wi-Fi operation migrated to the 5 gig and 6 gig?
Absolutely. I mean, that's really how we are seeing customers deploy, right? I mean, today they're increasingly looking at 5 gigahertz for the IT client devices, whereas the 2.4 is really for your barcode scanners and IoT-esque devices, right?
And so on to 2.4, you'll have like Wi-Fi, let's say Wi-Fi 6, sharing the frequency with ZigBee and Bluetooth. That's how you see it's evolving?
Absolutely, yeah. And as a common infrastructure platform, the benefit of adding multiple protocol support is we also can offer better coordination, right? So now if you have Bluetooth and ZigBee on the same access point, we are able to better coordinate rather than an overlay network, right, which is really out of band. You just have very little control.
Okay.
So this is a repetition of Sujit's slide, but I'll quickly go over it. All our Catalyst access points today come with Bluetooth built in. So the 9115, the 9170s have baked in Bluetooth, right, along with Wi-Fi 6. The 9120 also has Bluetooth, ZigBee, and Thread radios built in, along with the Wi-Fi 6 radios, right? And with the 9120, we are also adding a very unique capability to the portfolio, and that is the ability to run Docker-style applications on the access point, right? So which means the application will have access to the IoT radio, the traffic to and from the IoT radio, and you can now control custom southbound devices, right? And again, it's a very tacit acknowledgement of the fragmentation in the space, and we do realize that customers want to bring in solution vendors of their choice and bring to life use cases of their choice.
Do you have a practical example of that?
Yeah, I'll talk about it as well, right? Absolutely. So on the 9120s, like I mentioned, we will have Docker-style applications. And to your point about examples, the first one that we will be bringing to life is a ZigBee gateway. So think of an application for a software form factor that is actually now acting as a gateway for a ZigBee personal area network, right? And I think I have a slide right after this, right? And there are a couple of other use cases and partners that we are working with to enable some really interesting use cases, right? Electronic shelf labeling being one of them. Today, on the 3800, we do have a module that plugs in. Oops.
Had a module.
I'm sorry. So we do have a module that plugs in for electronic shelf labeling. And again, this presents with the multiple multi-protocol radios. It presents us an opportunity to assimilate that as a software capability on the access point, right? And we do foresee working with select partners. It is not something that we think we will enable en masse, but certainly we will take a wait and watch approach to really understand the landscape a little bit more. Yeah. Now, I quickly wanted to talk about Thread and ZigBee capabilities. And again, going back to my earlier point, with the ability to host Docker-style applications, today, the way these networks work is through an overlay gateway or a border router for Thread and a gateway for ZigBee devices. Now, with the Catalyst access point, the AP can now act as a gateway for your ZigBee PAN, right? And it's a network coordinator for a ZigBee mesh. And being the network coordinator enables the access point unhindered visibility into the devices within the personal area network, right? Today, if the gateway is a separate device, what you're seeing upstream is traffic after translation, which means the fine-grained visibility of how a lock is behaving versus how a light is behaving is completely lost. All you're seeing is an IP packet after translation. But given the fact that the AP is now a network coordinator, the AP gets unhindered visibility into, hey, is a lock misbehaving, right? Is a lock pumping traffic into the personal area network, right? And in which case, you can now drop the lock completely from the topology, right? And along with that, obviously it eliminates overlay gateways, so it's a big positive for the customer deployments.
But on that topic, I mean, how much do you have to work with like in this case, the lock vendor to pull that off?
Sure, the great point. So what we see is there are a couple of different aspects to it, right? One is if you are a lock that is standards compliant, for example, a ZigBee 3.0. right? Then a ZigBee 3.0 gateway should be able to talk to the lock right out of the door, right? Now, what we have seen is there are lock vendors who do add proprietary secret sauce on top of it. In those cases, we do have to work with specific lock vendors.
But wouldn't that be the rule? I mean, they all have their own management consoles and everything else that require their own gateways to be able to track and all of that. So how do you jump over that and actually leverage this?
Sure. So that's a very interesting point. One thing that comes up often in our conversations with a lot of these device vendors is the gateway is not their core business, right? The gateway is just a connectivity piece that they have to offer to really offer a full stack solution for their customers, right? They're not really interested in managing and building their own gateways. They're rather interested in building the endpoints, right? And that's the core business. So I think as long as these are standards-based, we are able to offer a standards-based gateway that will offer connectivity. In cases where there may be proprietary secret sauces, we'll obviously have to work with the vendors. Now, the beauty of a Docker-style infrastructure is it completely delineates the wireless access point software from these IoT applications, right? So the applications, so in your deployment, you may have lock vendor A for locks and vendor B for lights, you can go with 2 different applications on different sets of access points without having the need to tightly bake into the AP software itself. Right?
How are those going to be distributed? I mean, I'm envisioning 20,000 APs and 20,000 potential Docker containers that I can run in my infrastructure.
Sure.
Is there going to be an app store in the controller that I buy things through, or am I
Yeah.
able to put my own Docker containers on there?
Sure. Yeah, so at this point, the way we are thinking about it is the orchestration for the Docker apps will happen through Cisco DNS Center, because that is really the Uber network management solution, which has visibility into all the access points. The app registry will reside on Cisco DNS Center tethered to the cloud, and then the application gets pushed in, right? So you have the ability to choose APs on a map or from a list of APs, and then choose an application and then orchestrate the deployment of this application.
And if I want to deploy my own Docker container,
Yes.
I can do that as well. I would just do it through DNA Center.
Yeah, so we are still working through the signing process for how the Docker app gets pushed, right? Obviously, we want to add a layer of security to make sure that not every Docker app can make it to the AP, right? So there is some layer of certification or some layer of signing that has to happen, and that process is still TBD. Hopefully, in the next field day, we'll have an update for you on that.
I personally think you probably need a way other than DNA Center to get them onto the access points. I know quite a large number of customers aren't looking at DNA anytime soon.
Sure.
Well,
mainly due to cost.
I mean, we have a precedence, right? Because we have industrial switches where we can run containerized applications on today that don't require a DNA center.
Sure.
Right? So I guess the answer is we don't know yet, right?
Yeah, and I think there's usually a field network director or there is some other box that is orchestrating the application in that environment. In this environment, Cisco DNS Center seemed like a logical choice, but yeah, we'll have more answers as we roll this out.
Maybe kind of as a follow-on to that question, and you may have covered this and I might have missed it while making notes. What is the minimum requirements for supporting a gateway on one of these access points? Do you just need the access point in a controller, or do you need the DNA Center?
So the DNA Center is needed just to orchestrate the application onto the access point.
Right.
At this point, we are not thinking of pushing anything from the controller itself.
Yeah.
Simply because we have multiple flavors of controllers.
So even if you're just trying to support ZigBee, just as that gateway, that is going to be something that no matter what, you're going to have DNA Center to actually
at the outset.
Okay, I thought that's what I was hearing. I wanted to be absolutely
at the outset. Absolutely.
Thank you.
That's right.
Thinking about all the IoT devices, would you be able to segment the devices? Let's say you're owning a building and you're renting different sections of the building. You could say, okay, these IoT devices belong to that company. You could do that, and then
you could assign VLANs, or you can assign segments for segmenting out that traffic, right? Absolutely. And the beauty of running as a Docker application is it has its own interface, which means you can assign a VLAN to that interface, and then all the traffic automatically.
If you have like a student residence, you could have one per student room, and they could have their own IoT devices connected to your network. And
that's a use case we've heard. Absolutely. Okay. It's a bring your own IoT devices kind of an environment. Absolutely.
Are you working with any lock vendors to integrate with your system?
We're actually working with a couple of early partners.
Can you talk about them? Or?
Not yet. I can't take names yet, but again, we should have an update for you in the next session, for sure.
Thank you.
Now, apart from ZigBee and Thread, which are net new, Bluetooth is something that we've offered with our 4800 on the 11AC Wave 2 portfolio. And now on the new Catalyst portfolio, it comes as a standard on all our access points, right? And I'll quickly show you a demo of the beaconing solution that we have in Cisco DNS Spaces Cloud. But really, the idea is that we think of Bluetooth as belonging to a couple of different categories, right? One is the AP acting purely as a beacon. Right. And which means it's a AC-powered beacon in the ceiling, and then you don't have to deploy battery-based beacons on the floor, and you still get some of the same benefits like proximity marketing and navigation. Right. The second one is unmanaged Bluetooth, right? Which means you may have a Bluetooth 5.0 or a Bluetooth 4.0 compliant tag that you can buy off the shelf. and the AP has the ability to do receive capabilities. So it has the ability to scan telemetry from these unmanaged Bluetooth beacons, gather all the telemetry, and send it out to DNA Space's cloud. Right? In that case, what we cannot offer is the ability to manage these Bluetooth beacons in terms of TX power, in terms of changing the UUID, the major, minor, and things like that. Right? And the third class of Bluetooth solutions is where you not only gather the telemetry, but you can also do configuration for these tags, right? So let's say after 5 p.m. you want to turn down the transmit power on a lot of these battery-based beacons. The AP can now connect over a Bluetooth Classic connection to configure these beacons to sleep, and then the next day morning the reverse happens, right? So we want to offer all three. In fact, for the managed Bluetooth solution, we do that through third-party tag vendors, where there is compliant firmware on the Bluetooth tags so that it can actually be managed by the Cisco access points. And I'll quickly show a demo in just a little bit. I'll skip this for now. I'll come back. So on the 3800, I wanted to quickly touch upon this because, again, this is a capability that is very unique to Cisco, right? Now, we have a lot of competitors who do offer solutions through USB-based dongles, whereas Cisco was really the first one to go out with a PCIe-based slot a few years ago. And in the last 3 years, we've actually opened this framework up for third parties to really go ahead and develop their own solutions so that customers can now collapse these adjacent wireless solutions into a unified infrastructure. And the advantage with building a PCIe-based slot module for the access point is really there is no host-side driver integration needed by any of these module partners, right? It's truly a plug-and-play capability that we offer with the 3800, right? And we'll obviously offer similar capabilities going forward as well.
So this is going to eventually appear in the 91XX that's still to be developed?
That's correct. Right.
Is the plan for the module interface to remain the same, or are we expecting a different connector or form factor, or?
So just for the sake of backward compatibility, we will offer this connectivity option, but we're also thinking of how do we simplify development of these solutions, right? I mean, how do we delineate USB-based solutions from host-side driver integration and things like that? So we are definitely thinking on those lines. And I did want to call out some really cool use cases that are today part of the 3800 module portfolio. We have a partner who's developed a scalable Bluetooth reader for cruise liners. In fact, one of the customer has deployed it over 4 ships. And they track people on ships, and you get a drink, you order it, and you get it wherever you are on the ship. And it's a cool use case. The other one is, like I mentioned before, it's electronic shelf labeling. Again, this is something that we are increasingly seeing in Europe, but also in other parts of the world, just for labor savings. So how do you completely eliminate the paper price tags and actually do dynamic pricing and things like that in retail stores?
So is there any integration for the electronic labeling into the 9120 at all?
So it is in the works. Absolutely, it is in the works. Yeah.
What about the range? Do you need to add access point to have that working?
For this one?
Yeah.
Actually not.
No? Okay.
Yeah, actually, because again, this is based off of a proprietary flavor of 15.4.
Okay.
So it uses mesh.
Okay.
And a typical retail store with 50,000 SKUs will probably have 1 or 2 gateways.
Okay.
2 is probably.
So you don't need to add APs to make it work?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. Now, wanted to come to the control piece of the solution stack, right? And that is, it starts with visibility at the very core, right? And like I mentioned before, a lot of these devices today are beyond the purview of the IT persona in an enterprise, right? Now, for the very first time, because of the converged wireless infrastructure, the IT persona gets to see a whole set of devices like lights and locks and things like that, right? And that is a first step, but you can also think of now segmenting a lot of these devices, right? You can do VLAN segmentation, you can do VXLANs in SDA networks to be able to segment. And you can now do, for example, lights from OSRAM belong to a different segment than the locks from ASA Abloy, right? So again, you get to segment IoT traffic from the corporate IT traffic, and that's again a very basic ask from a lot of the customers who are looking at converged IoT networks. And I won't touch upon the IPSK. I think that's been touched upon earlier as well. But again, we see that as a very secure means of onboarding for Wi-Fi devices, as the Wi-Fi IoT devices especially. So I wanted to quickly touch upon the consumption layer of it. And we offer consumption through Cisco DNA Spaces. That is our cloud platform. And from a network infrastructure standpoint, it is the single aggregation layer for telemetry across devices. So you can think of Bluetooth tags and beacons, and you can think of lights and locks. All of the traffic aggregates into a single cloud layer. And we also offer streaming telemetry APIs so that partners can build specific applications, right? So like I mentioned before in the very first slide, we see IoT as a very vertical specific play. And a lot of the vendors who go into deploying these IoT solutions come with a deep domain expertise in terms of offering the end-to-end solution, right? And we see the streaming telemetry API as a means to offer, as a means for these partners to offer the deep domain expertise and the deep domain-based solutions, while from a customer standpoint, they still do that with a single unified network layer. Right? So this is what I was talking about. We have APIs, we have SLA on the cloud platform to really offer a very robust IoT solution experience. And then we have a slew of partners on the top who can consume through our streaming telemetry API and can offer outcomes. Right? Now, some of the cool use cases in the IoT space that strike a chord with a lot of our customers are, the first one is workspace optimization, right? In retail and in building spaces, especially as a lot of these floor plans go to seamless open floor plans. The facilities wants to understand, hey, how is the traffic moving? What's the worker experience like, right? And things like that. And today we can offer that through the Wi-Fi analytics, which is again aggregated in Cisco DNA Spaces. And we don't just stop at aggregation, but we also offer full-fledged insights into, hey, what's the dwell time in this area of the building? How much time did people spend in the pantry, et cetera, right? And the next part of a lot of the IoT solutions are the next big dominant use case is asset tracking. Again, this is a very secular use case across verticals. We've seen it in retail, logistics, healthcare. I mean, it's really surprising how many wheelchairs are lost in a hospital or how many IV infusion pumps are misplaced. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we work with a bunch of tag vendors who make Cisco compliant tags that can be deployed by customers, and these are managed through the Cisco infrastructure, all through a single dashboard, right? And if there are very specific outcomes that a partner wants to offer, they can absolutely do that, right? And I'll give you an example. Baby monitoring in hospitals, right? It's a massively critical use case for a lot of hospitals, and we recognize that we are not in the best position to offer that end outcome for the customer. So we work with players like Stanley, Aeroscout, and they offer the end-to-end outcome, whereas we offer everything from the middleware to the network infrastructure layer. And these are some of the partners that we work with. So, for example, in wayfinding and mapping, we work with partners who bring the end-to-end solution to life for a customer. And in some cases, we've seen customers use marketing and CRM tools to offer to get end outcomes for a customer, right?
So, knowing the breadth of the portfolio that Cisco has, do you see some of this feeding into other data points for other analysis, like either meta-analysis or even security analysis, like especially layering location information with other data?
Absolutely, right? And I'll give you an example for something as simple as visibility, right? Now, because you are the IoT gateway, because you are the gateway for, let's say, a ZigBee PAN, and you have a lock that is misbehaving, right? Now you can correlate the location of the lock with the information on the malicious behavior, and you can offer a completely cohesive view for an IT persona to take action.
Yep.
Right? So I'll quickly take just 2 minutes to give an overview of the Cisco DNA Spaces dashboard. This is just a demo dashboard, but again, like I said earlier, we have digitization statistics on the number of people, dwell time, people analytics, but I'll quickly go to the BLE Manager, which is where we get to configure a lot of these beacons. So today we offer a couple of different options for customers from a beaconing perspective. So customer could choose iBeacon, or they could choose Eddystone, the UID flavor of it, or the URL flavor. Or you could also do 5 virtual iBeacons on the access point. Now, with the 5 virtual iBeacons, you could do something cool like role-based notifications. So you could have an iBeacon with a UUID, a major and minor, targeted towards the employees in a hospitality environment. And the same AP could, in the next cycle, beacon out a UUID and major and minor that is targeted towards a guest in a hospitality environment, right? So, and we offer a whole bunch of configuration options for a lot of these. So, for example, Eddystone URL, or you could go to an iBeacon, and you can choose what is the power level at which the beacon should broadcast, what's the UUID, the major and minor, and things like that. Right?